My parents told me I was an accident my entire life. Not in a joking way. My mom, Maureen, would say it at family dinners like she was commenting on the weather. She got pregnant at 19, had to drop out of her accounting program, and apparently I ruined her whole trajectory. My dad, Noah, backed her up constantly. They had my brother Brandon 8 years later when they were actually ready, and the difference in how they treated us was something I noticed before I could even articulate it. Brandon got the bigger bedroom when he turned 10. I got moved to the basement. Brandon got new clothes for school while I got whatever still fit from previous years. When I asked why, my mom told me Brandon was planned and wanted, and I should be grateful they kept me at all. I was maybe 12 when she said that. I remember sitting on the basement stairs afterward, thinking about how weird it was that my own mother genuinely seemed to resent my existence. 12 years old. 12! At that age, you should be thinking about which Pokemon is the coolest, not sitting on basement stairs processing the fact that your own mother genuinely regrets your existence. And here's what kills me. This wasn't even said in the heat of an argument. This was stated as fact, like she was explaining why the sky is blue. Brandon was planned, you weren't, therefore he gets a normal life and you get the basement and hand-me-downs. Makes sense, right? Look, there are parents who try to hide their favoritism, and then there's Maureen and Noah who literally built a caste system inside their own home. One kid gets the penthouse experience, the other gets, be grateful we kept you at all. At 12. Graduation day changed everything. June 2019. I walked across that stage genuinely believing things might get better now that I was done with high school. Maybe they would see me as an adult and treat me differently. I got home around 4 in the afternoon and my bags were packed by the front door. 3 garbage bags full of my stuff. My mom was standing in the kitchen doorway and she told me, "Congratulations, 18 years of dead weight is enough, time to go." I asked if I could at least stay one more night to figure out where to go. She laughed. Not a nervous laugh, a real laugh. She told me I got 18 years of nights I did not deserve and I was not getting another one. My dad came out and grabbed 2 of the bags and threw them into a puddle in the driveway. It had been raining all week. He told me now I matched my future and went back inside. Brandon watched from his window upstairs and shouted down that he could finally have a proper gaming setup. That used to be my room before they gave it to him a month earlier. They had been planning that. I need y'all to understand the scale of this insanity. This man just graduated high school. This is supposed to be a day of pride, a day of photos with your diploma, a day of "we're so proud of you." And he's greeted by garbage bags at the door. Not suitcases, garbage bags. Because even in the act of kicking out their own child, they couldn't resist the symbolism. You are garbage to us. And the father, grabs those bags and hurls them into a puddle. Now you match your future. That's not spontaneous anger. That's a rehearsed line. He practiced that. He stood in front of a mirror and thought, yeah, that'll really finish him off. That's the knockout punch. And Brandon upstairs yelling about his gaming setup? Listen, I can't even fully blame Brandon. He's 17. He's a product of this system. But the parents? They planned this for at least a month. They gave away his room in advance. This was a project. I slept under a gas station overhang that night because it was still raining. I had $43 from my part-time job at a grocery store. No car, no phone plan since they canceled me off theirs immediately. I figured out shelter options the next morning using the library computers. Here is the thing Reddit needs to understand. That night under the gas station overhang, I made myself a promise. I was going to build something. And when they eventually needed me for something, because people who burn bridges always need something eventually, I was going to be ready. Not ready to forgive, ready to watch them understand what they did. 7 years. I worked 3 jobs for 2 years straight, got my EMT certification, moved into an apartment with 4 roommates, saved obsessively, got into a technical program, built a career in healthcare administration, got my own apartment, then my own house. Every single promotion, every raise, every achievement, part of my brain filed it away as ammunition. Unhealthy? Maybe. But I never stopped being angry about that puddle in the driveway. $43 in a gas station. That's where And you know what? Most people in that situation would have broken, or forgiven, or tried to crawl back and beg. But he lay under that overhang and started planning. 7 years. 3 jobs at once. EMT certification. His own career. His own house. And the whole time, Every promotion, every success, he was filing it away as ammunition. This isn't just spite success. This is the architecture of revenge. He was building his life like a siege weapon. And here's what people don't understand about this kind of motivation. Yeah, therapists will say, it's unhealthy, let go of the resentment. But sometimes that rage is the only fuel you have. Sometimes, I'll show them, is what gets you up at 5 a.m. for your third job when everything in you wants to quit. 2 weeks ago, a receptionist at my office told me there was a woman at the front desk crying and asking for me by name. I knew before I even walked out there. I had been waiting for this moment for 7 years, and I knew exactly who it was going to be. My mom was standing in our lobby with mascara running down her face. She looked older than I remembered. She started talking immediately about how they were 3 months behind on the house, and the bank was starting proceedings, and she did not know who else to ask, and she was so sorry about how things ended. I just stood there and smiled, because I had been waiting for this exact moment since June 2019. Update coming soon, because what happened next requires its own post. Oh, here we go. 7 years. 7 years of building, grinding, waiting, and now she shows up crying in his lobby. We're 3 months behind on the house. I didn't know who else to ask. You didn't know who else to ask? Really? Because 7 years ago, you seemed real confident that this particular person wasn't worth keeping around. And he just stood there and smiled. Because he knew. He knew this moment was coming. He's been waiting for it like a spider in a web. Update 1. After my last post blew up, many of you asked what I actually said to my mom in that lobby. Here is the thing. I did not say anything at first. I just let her talk because I wanted to hear every detail of how bad things had gotten. She told me my dad Noah lost his warehouse job 14 months ago. Not laid off, fired for attendance issues. He had been calling in sick constantly because he was dealing with depression. She said this like I was supposed to feel sympathy, like the man who threw my belongings into a puddle deserved my compassion because life got hard. She explained they refinanced the house twice and now owed more than it was worth, 3 months behind with no way to catch up. Then she said the part that made me laugh out loud in my office lobby. Brandon was still living at home. My brother was 24, had dropped out of community college twice, and worked maybe 15 hours weekly at a vape shop. The gaming setup he celebrated when they kicked me out was still his primary activity. The planned and wanted child had turned into nothing, and they enabled it completely. Wait, let me savor this moment with y'all. The planned and wanted child. The one they kicked out their firstborn for. The one who got the bigger room, the new clothes, all the love. This child at 24 has dropped out of community college twice and works 15 hours a week at a vape shop. Meanwhile, the accident, the dead weight, the unwanted one, built a healthcare career and owns his own home. Guys, if this was a movie, critics would say, too on the nose, the irony is too obvious. But this is life. Sometimes the universe just delivers. And that gaming setup Brandon was so excited about? Still his primary activity. 8 years later. The golden child turned into the literal stereotype of basement-dwelling gamers that the internet makes memes about. You can't write this stuff. I asked her directly why she thought I would help. She cried harder and said because we were family, and she knew they made mistakes. I told her to be specific about what mistakes. She could not say it. She kept using phrases like, things could have been handled differently, and we should have been more supportive of your transition to adulthood. Transition to adulthood. Like they helped me transition instead of throwing me into the street. I told her I needed to think about it and took her number. She seemed hopeful when she left. That was the point. 3 days later, I drove to their neighborhood. Not to their house, to the houses around them. I had researched their HOA situation years ago because I knew I would need leverage eventually. Their neighborhood had strict property maintenance requirements. Their lawn was overgrown, gutters sagging, fence had broken panels. I photographed every violation I could find. Then I submitted formal complaints to the HOA board, anonymous complaints about property standards declining. The HOA can fine homeowners for violations, fines that compound if not addressed, fines that become liens on property. Transition to adulthood. Transition to adulthood. That's like pushing someone off a bridge and then saying, Well, we could have been more supportive of your transition into the water. She physically cannot say the words, "We threw you onto the street with garbage bags." Her brain just refuses to process it. Because if she says it out loud, she has to admit she's a monster. So, in her head, it's a transition to adulthood. And here he is, listening to all of this, giving her hope, taking her number. While he's known about their HOA situation for years, he researched it ages ago. Do you understand the level here? This isn't impulsive revenge. This is a chess game he started playing when he was still living with 4 roommates in a cramped apartment. 2 days later, my dad texted me. Mom gave him my number. He wanted to meet and discuss the family situation. No apology, just that we needed to discuss things like adults. The man who told me I matched my future while throwing my wet bags now wanted to discuss things like adults. I agreed to meet him. Not because I was done, because I needed to understand exactly how desperate they were before deciding how much pressure to apply. We met in a hardware store parking lot. He showed up looking 10 years older. He started immediately explaining that Mom exaggerated how things ended, and I needed to understand they were overwhelmed financially and could not support an adult child. I asked if he remembered what he said in the driveway. He claimed he did not remember exact words. I told him I remembered every word for 7 years. Then he asked if I was the one who reported them to the HOA. More coming. What happened next deserves its own update. Mom exaggerated how things ended. Exaggerated. There are things you cannot exaggerate. Garbage bags in the rain? That's a binary event. Either happened or didn't. Puddle in the driveway? Either was there or wasn't. Now you match your future. Either you said it or you didn't. And this classic, I don't remember the exact words. Favorite weapon of people who know they said something unforgivable. He remembers. He just hopes his son doesn't. But his son remembers every word. 7 years. Every single night. And now this man is standing in a hardware store parking lot looking a decade older. And his main question isn't, forgive me. It's, did you snitch on us to the HOA? Priorities, you know? Update 2. So when my dad asked if I was the one who reported them to the HOA, I did not deny it. I told him yes, I was the one who submitted the complaints. His face went red immediately, and he started going off about how I was trying to destroy them when they came to me for help, how I was being vindictive and petty over something that happened years ago when I was basically an adult anyway. I let him finish his whole rant. Then I asked him if he remembered what it felt like to have nowhere to sleep. He said I was being dramatic, and that I had friends and options, and they knew I would figure it out. That was the moment I realized they had actually convinced themselves their version was true. In their heads, they did not throw out a teenager with nothing. They gave an adult a push toward independence. I told him I slept under a gas station overhang that first night. I told him I had $43 and no phone. I told him about the shelter I stayed at for 2 weeks before I found a room to rent. He actually looked uncomfortable for about 3 seconds before he switched to telling me that dwelling on the past was not productive and we needed to focus on solutions now. 3 seconds. 3 seconds of discomfort and immediately switching to, let's not dwell on the past. You know, that's the signature move of people who did something terrible and don't want to be held accountable. Why dig up old stuff? Let's focus on the future, says the person whose past makes them uncomfortable. But here's what blows my mind even more. They've actually convinced themselves of an alternate version of events. In their heads, they didn't throw a kid onto the street. They gave an adult a push toward independence. This isn't lying to others anymore. This is lying to themselves. They rewrote history in their own brains so they could sleep at night. And now their son is telling them about the gas station overhang, the shelter, the $43, and it doesn't fit their narrative. Cognitive dissonance at maximum capacity. That was when I explained there would be no solutions from me. I told him the HOA complaints were just the beginning. I had spent 7 years building a life specifically so I could watch them lose theirs when this moment came. He called me sick in the head and got back in his truck. 4 days later, Brandon texted. First time hearing from him since graduation. He wanted to meet up and talk brother to brother. I knew exactly what this was. They sent him because they thought sibling connection might work where parent guilt failed. I agreed to meet him at a food court near his vape shop because I wanted to see what angle they were going to try. Brandon showed up 20 minutes late. He immediately started with how he knew things were rough back then, but he was just a kid himself and did not have any control over what our parents did. I reminded him he was 16 and fully capable of not shouting about gaming setups while his brother stood in the rain with garbage bags. He said I was holding grudges like a child. 20 minutes late. At the moment when the family home depends on him, he shows up 20 minutes late. That tells you everything you need to know about Brandon. He's so used to the world revolving around him that even in a crisis situation, he can't be bothered to show up on time. And immediately he opens with, "I was just a kid." 16 years old. 16! At 16, you understand you shouldn't be yelling about gaming setups while your brother is being kicked out into the rain. At 16, you have basic empathy. But Brandon, he's a product of a system where he was the prince and his brother was the help. He genuinely doesn't understand why what he did was wrong. In his worldview, everything was normal. He got the room, his brother left, end of story. Then he made the actual pitch. He said if I helped them save the house, they would give me a percentage of it in their will. They would put it in writing. I could have 30% of the eventual sale value. He genuinely thought he was offering me something generous. The house they kicked me out of. 30%. After they die. In exchange for saving it now. I asked him what percentage he was getting. He got quiet. Then admitted he was getting 50% because he had been helping them maintain it for years. Maintain it. The overgrown lawn and broken fence panels were him maintaining it. I told him no deal, and that the HOA fines were going to keep compounding. He asked what I actually wanted then. I said I wanted them to feel exactly what I felt. Nowhere to go. Nobody helping. Realizing the people who were supposed to care about you simply do not. He called me bitter and pathetic and left his food on the table. 30%. 30 of the house they kicked him out of. After the parents die. Meanwhile, Brandon, who's been maintaining the house with his 15-hour vape shop schedule, gets 50. And this maintaining absolutely destroys me. The overgrown lawn and broken fence panels, that's the result of his maintenance. Years of living in his parents' house, zero financial contribution, and he genuinely believes he deserves the bigger share. Because he lived there? Played video games in his room? And when his brother refuses this generous offer, Brandon calls him bitter and pathetic, leaves his food on the table, and walks out. 24 years old with the emotional maturity of that same 16-year-old who yelled about the gaming setup. Some people just never grow. 3 days ago, my mom sent me a long text message. She said the HOA fines were now over $2,000 and they received the official foreclosure notice. She said they had 30 days. Then she said something that actually surprised me. She admitted what they did was wrong. Not just handled differently, wrong. And she begged me for one conversation where I could tell her what would actually make this right. I agreed to that conversation. It is happening tomorrow. And I have something very specific planned. Final update coming after. Final update. So this is the last update, because everything came to a head this week and I finally got the closure I spent 7 years waiting for. After my dad tried to get me to admit I filed the HOA complaints and I refused to confirm or deny, he switched tactics completely. He started showing up at places he knew I would be. The grocery store near my house. The gym I posted about on social media years ago. He would approach me and try to have conversations about family and forgiveness and how holding grudges was destroying me more than them. Classic manipulation. I told him every single time that I was doing fine and he was the one about to lose his house. The HOA fines kept compounding. They were up to almost $4,000 by last week. The bank had officially scheduled the foreclosure sale. My parents had 30 days to vacate. And Brandon, the golden child who was planned and wanted, had done absolutely nothing to help. He was still working his 15 hours at the vape shop and playing video games in my old bedroom. He started stalking him, showing up at grocery stores, at the gym, tracking him down through old social media posts. And every single time, the same script about forgiveness and how grudges are destroying you, not them. Classic gaslighting of the highest order. It'll feel better for you if you forgive us. No, Dad. It'll feel better for him if he doesn't lose his house. This isn't about spiritual healing for his son. This is about saving his own skin wrapped in spiritual packaging. And through all of this, Brandon. $4,000 in fines, 30 days until eviction, family in crisis, and the golden boy is still working his 15 hours and playing video games. He's not even trying to help, because his entire life, someone else handled everything for him. Why would this be any different? My mom came to my office again 5 days ago. This time, she brought Brandon with her. I think she thought seeing my brother would make me emotional or nostalgic. Instead, I just saw a 24-year-old man who never had to struggle for anything, looking uncomfortable in a building full of professionals. He could barely make eye contact with me. My mom begged. She said they would lose everything. She said they had nowhere to go. She said Brandon would be homeless too, and did I really want my little brother on the streets? I reminded her that she had no problem putting me on the streets at 18 with $43 and garbage bags full of my stuff. I asked Brandon if he remembered what he shouted from the window that day. He claimed he was just a kid. He was 17, old enough to know better. Then I did what I had been planning for 7 years. I told them I had actually purchased their house at the foreclosure auction 2 days earlier. The bank had accepted my bid. I now owned the property they were living in, and they had 30 days to leave as tenants or I would begin formal eviction proceedings. 7 years of planning. And here's the moment. He's standing in his office, in a building full of professionals, facing the mother who told him 18 years of dead weight is enough, and the brother who can't even make eye contact. And he tells them he bought their house. Their home now belongs to him. The boy from the gas station overhang, with $43 in his pocket, now owns the property where the people who threw him out are living. This isn't even revenge anymore. This is poetry. This is a perfectly closed narrative loop. They kicked him out of this house, and now he's going to kick them out with paperwork, with legal authority, with that 30-day notice they loved using on him. My mom started screaming that I could not do this, that it was illegal, that I was her son. I showed her the paperwork on my phone. The deed transfer was already processing. I told her congratulations. Now she knew exactly how it felt to be told to get out of the only home she knew. Brandon finally spoke up and asked where they were supposed to go. I told him I did not care. The same way they did not care where I was supposed to go in June 2019 when they threw my wet bags in the driveway and told me never to come back. My dad was not there for this conversation. My mom told me he could not even face me anymore. Good. I told her to tell him something from me. Tell him that puddle in the driveway was the last thing I thought about every single night for 7 years. And now he could think about me every night for the rest of his life, while wondering where his next home would be. They have until the 15th to vacate my property. I am not helping them move. I am not giving them money. I am not forgiving anything. They gave me a graduation gift of homelessness. I returned the favor. Full circle. Where are we supposed to go? Asked Brandon. And the answer, I don't care. Same words. Same energy. Same indifference they showed an 18-year-old kid with garbage bags. The father couldn't even show up. Couldn't look him in the eyes, because somewhere deep down, he knows. He remembers that line about the puddle. He remembers rehearsing it. And now, he'll have to think about it every night, not knowing where he'll live in a month. Full circle. Perfect symmetry. Look, I know half of you are thinking, this is too cruel, you should learn to forgive. And I understand that position. Forgiveness is liberating. It's healthy. It's the right thing according to every self-help book ever written. But there are people who don't deserve forgiveness. There are things you can't just let go. They didn't just hurt him. They systematically destroyed his self-worth for 18 years, then threw him out like trash on a day that should have been a celebration. And the only thing they cared about afterward was money. Not the relationship, not redemption, money.